Hello, everybody. It's Rob Seaver, Executive Director with Leads Council. I'm here bringing you this week's leadership webinar series. This is the second of a double header with Invoke. I am, as always, excited about this one. This one in particular is exciting because it covers a topic that I think is very controversial. I think it needs a lot of education behind it, and the people on this call are the people to help us with that. Without further ado, I'd like to real quickly get into the housekeeping. In your control panel, there should be a questions box. Please, if you have questions, the panelists have agreed to answer those along the way. So throw those up there. I'll make sure that they see them and we'll try to get them answered. If we don't get yours answered on this call, we will do our best to answer them after the call. I'm going to move quickly into this so we can get started. Once again, trying to read this without butchering it. This week's webinar is Agile Marketing, how AI-powered conversational analytics can inform your strategy in real time. Got that out without losing my breath. The two panelists today that are going to take over the heavy duty for me is Ben Sullivan and Ian Daly of Invoke. Ben and Ian, thank you. I'm excited about hearing this, and it's your show now, Ben.
Great. Thanks, Rob. Great to be back 2 weeks in a row. It's great to have Ian, one of our all-stars here at Invoke. If you don't know what we do, Invoke is a call tracking and conversational analytics SaaS company. We work with a who's who of large and small brands, as well as performance and affiliate marketers. The company was founded about a decade ago on pay-per-call. We're recognized as a leader in the space, not only for our call tracking abilities, but our advanced AI features. Forrester, G2 Crowd, Opus, and other pundits see us as a real leader when it comes to this technology. Our entry point is we sell to marketers, right? We make the modern day marketer much smarter. We help them with keyword level attribution, one-to-one data that they can figure out what is converting well, what keywords, what content, what display, social, is actually driving sales or revenue versus service calls. In addition to that, we've got a couple flavors of AI and machine learning that is taking us down other paths into the contact center, helping sales folks and giving a broader set of rich data points that our customers now more than ever need on inbound phone calls. So with that, I'd like to introduce Ian. Ian leads our product marketing team at Invoke. He brings to market new technologies that enable the modern day marketer in industries like financial services, insurance, telecom, home services to capture a new set of rich data, conversational data from one of their most important revenue channels, which is inbound phone calls. Ian's been working at the intersection of machine learning in brand and performance marketing for more than 7 years. 2 stints ago, he worked product marketing at Seismic DSP, and most recently forging partnerships, strategic alliances at Rocket Fuel. So we are super happy to have Ian here. I asked Ian for a few fun facts. He gave me 3. I'm only going to read 1 because the other 2, well, we just won't get into the other 2. But Ian caught a foul ball at the hottest baseball game ever played at Oracle Park in San Francisco. Ian, the question to you, first question, was it barehanded or was it with a glove?
The story's probably not that great. I picked it up off the ground. It was a line drive that nearly killed a woman. She was staring at her phone, not paying attention, and it literally, her boyfriend reached around her and with his large first baseman's glove and basically saved her life. And then the ball just landed basically in my lap. We were all kind of in shock because we thought she had passed away in that moment. But she was fine. Wow. She was fine. Yeah. She was fine.
Good, good. So I'm going to turn it over to you now, and I'll help sort of guide the conversation. But we're going to talk about a scary topic for some people, AI and machine learning. And before we get into that and sort of the use cases in what we're seeing in the industry, how we're helping clients today, both marketers and downstream partners, take us through a little bit of the history as you see it, is how we got here. How do we get to a place where we could predict in real time outcomes of inbound phone calls? Just give us a little background on that before we get rolling.
Yeah. I think when we talk about the idea of conversational analytics, as it relates to voice calls, as it relates to any type of conversation, it starts foundationally at the source of that data. And in the case of phone calls, that source is a call recording, right? We have to start with understanding what was that conversation between the caller and the agent. And so, you know, marketers and contact center professionals, businesses have been mining information from call recordings for an extremely long period of time, as long as they've existed, right? As long as they've existed, they've known that it's been important to listen to those recordings, to analyze what's being said, coach their agents on how to perform better, coach them on what to say, what not to say, how to handle those calls differently, and coach them on the brand messaging so that when callers are calling in, asking product questions, wanting to make a purchase, et cetera, that they deliver a quality experience there. And where AI comes into play is how do we get beyond this call recording where I can see it in a dashboard, I can click play, I can put on my headphones and listen to it at best at 1.5 speed, right? How do we get beyond that? How do we take what would be an otherwise extremely manual process and begin to break it down into components where we can analyze it at much greater scale, at the scale that marketers today demand, where you're not just brute force attacking it with a team of people who can listen to calls.
Yeah, that's great. And when you mention or when you say call recordings, I think a lot of folks think about the contact center, right? Agent coaching, sales coaching. Are we sticking to scripts? Are we going back at night, reviewing, sending out to managers, good, bad? How do we enhance? But how does our technology, how do we start to bring this up more upstream and put this into the marketer's hands? And what's the value that they are ascertaining from this technology?
Right. So I think what we're seeing now is this recognition among the marketing community that you know, we need to be looking at these offline channels for data and for analytics, because especially in those fields that you mentioned before, you know, insurance, telecom, home services, healthcare, et cetera. The inbound phone channel often represents 30, 40, 50% of how they drive revenue. And if you're a digital marketing person, if you're a performance marketing person, and you're squarely focused on that digital end-to-end conversion pathway, well, then you have this complete blind spot in your marketing programs, this black hole of data, which is your customer calls. And so marketers are gravitating to understanding, okay, I understand that I am running my digital campaign, but people are opting to pick up the phone. People are calling in because this purchase is stressful, it's complicated, I have a lot of questions. I want confidence that that purchase that I make, or that service, or that appointment that I'm booking is gonna be the right bet for me. And so they need to go in and say, okay, where are my analytics around these calls, right? I've got Adobe Analytics, or I've got Google Analytics, I've got analytics that are running on my website, but what analytics do I have as a marketer for my calls? What analytics do I have for what actually transpired on that call? Not just that a call happened, great. Can I tie that back to media? Even better. But what was the outcome of that call? What topics were being discussed, right? So you can kind of think of a call recording as almost like the tag that you might put on a website to begin to track and begin to understand the nature of that web visitor. But you think of the call recording as all those rich analytics that you can get. What were the behaviors of that person on the website? What page visits did they, what products were they interested in? What did they ultimately do? And so marketers need that visibility. And the only way to get that is through using machine learning to take the insights from that call recording, that unstructured data around call recordings, and bring it back into something that they can take action on and really help not only design a better advertising experience, but design an overall customer experience that's going to make sense.
Yep. Yeah, that's great. Talk a little bit about, you compared call recordings to sort of website tag, right? And to gather rich analytics on the digital world. what's your perspective on the industry's adoption of call recordings, vis-a-vis digital compliance
Yeah.
issues, questions, give us your perspective there. Because I feel, I mean, we live in this world every day, and I feel like the call recording and what happens on the call has such rich data set, rich information that marketers don't need to wait, right, on the contact center or some report that comes to them 30 days later around what converted, what didn't. So talk to me a little bit about how you see sort of the adoption of companies using call recordings and the compliance risk or associated risks.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're inside of an individual customer interaction, it's right to feel like, hey, I need to make sure this is all on the up and up, right? I need to make sure that if they're giving away sensitive information on that call, if they're bringing up sensitive topics, that we need to make sure we're in full compliance, because we obviously don't want to run into a regulatory issue, CCPA, GDPR, these types of things that are regulating these interactions that we see today. And so I think there's a couple ways to think about this. Number one, which is when a caller is calling a business, that's a very opt-in motion that they're electing into. It's not like I'm reading Yahoo News or some website out there, and there's this third-party data company scraping my information and attaching it to my cookie syncing with a lot of different other vendors out there, because there's no implicit consent that I necessarily have with that third party. I think I'm visiting New York Times, and I assume that New York Times may or may not be tracking me, but I don't know about New York Times partner of a partner, right? When you call a business, it's a very different scenario than that. And so, when we look at a lot of these regulatory issues as it relate to call recordings and therefore conversational analytics, we find that they actually don't have a really much impact at all, because we're capturing this type of first-party data on behalf of a brand about a consumer who's electing to call in. I think secondarily, you need to start thinking about things like PII. And what type of information am I collecting about this individual consumer? What can be personally identifiable? What's sensitive information? And are we treating that data with the right business practices? And are we able to have the right retention policies? And are we able to redact out or remove out sensitive information that we don't want a lot of folks to have access to? And so, redaction policy and redaction capability is really critical to be able to say, hey, this consumer is giving out their credit card information or their social security number or information that might be tracked back to them that we don't want a lot of people within the organization or anybody else to have access to. And so you can, we offer technologies to be able to automatically redact that out. And what that gives you is that type of compliance, like PCI DSS compliance, which is what financial services companies demand if they're going to have this type of information. You apply that to all those types of credit card transactions that a lot of enterprises need. And what you find is that once you go through all those regulatory, those compliance steps, and you go through those teams, we have the largest companies in the company across banks, healthcare, telecommunications. We're recording their information, generating these analytics, and it's all on the up and up. So I think any marketer can take solace in that.
Yeah, that's good. So kind of walk us through the predictive nature, right? That marketers, the benefit for them to leverage this type of technology, and the real-time benefit, with the 90+% accuracy rate that they can predict an outcome. Rob and I were talking earlier about, Minority Report, if anyone remembers that movie, with Tom Cruise and predicting the crime before it happens, obviously that helped drive crime down significantly. So if you translate that into marketing talk, if you can help marketers predict the outcome in real time of a conversion or an appointment set or a sale made, how does that help them? Like, what's the benefit? And then what are the other things that they're able to do via audience management, integration, and other types of technologies that sit behind where they can integrate in real time?
Yeah, I think, so let's take it and let me explain how we get to that, and then the benefits of it. So we start with the recording, right? Okay, great. Then we have this magical AI that then just analyzes that, right? Now, what we need to do is first take that recording and actually transcribe it into something that is basically machine readable. So we turn that into a transcript. And if we can do that in real time, we basically stream that transcript as far as that conversation is happening. Then we have our AI algorithms begin to analyze that transcript. And so what you want to do as a marketer, let's start with what's sort of, I'll call prescriptive. What do we know we want to look for? If you're a marketer that sells an e-commerce product, it's a high ticket item, and you want to be able to track if that when a sale happens over the phone. Okay, great. We know that sales happen over the phone, so we allow you to build a model that basically analyzes prior call recordings where a sale happened and call recordings where a sale didn't happen. It builds this model, as you talked about, to be able to detect those types of outcomes like a purchase in real time. So what we've done in theory is we've taken what would otherwise be a very, very manual process. We've taken what would be a human listening to a call, listening through the whole thing, writing down a few things about it, checking off boxes, did a purchase happen, blah, 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 blah. We take that, and with all the manual effort that goes into that, with all the errors that humans actually inject into the process, there's a misnomer that we think that, oh, AI, is the machine going to have the same accuracy as humans? Humans are terribly inaccurate. I mean, like, first of all, who are you paying, and do they care about? Do they care about this whole thing that they're doing? Do they like their job? Are they tired? Did they get enough sleep last night? Humans are incredibly inaccurate, and they don't do things consistently. And there's ways to get around that. But what you do is you take,
right? Ian, it's time
and it's money.
Consuming. So you think about thousands of call recordings or thousands of data points you have to sift through, right? Doesn't help you in real time when the industry is changing and the world is changing literally overnight, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have customers that are waiting 60 days to get those reports back, right? 60 days. How am I going to optimize my media? I have to report back on a weekly basis to my superiors and my board. How am I going to take this data that's 60 days old and apply it in real time? You can't, right? So that's what AI gets you. Is it takes this repetitive task, it does it consistently, it does it accurately, it does it transparently, and it allows you to take action on that data in real time. And so what we do is we say, okay, that's great, we've been able to identify that, but how do we make it actionable? And you do that by tying it back to those digital touch points that preceded it, right? And how do I tie back to those customer IDs, those customer records, so then I can influence their next experience? And so if I see that I ran campaign A that was, that featured these 3 keywords, and now I can see all the way through at a session level what the outcome of those calls were. I can see that in real time. I have a very nice feedback loop that powers that automation. And so we automate the call recording, we automate the marketing. We give you that full visibility into something that was a complete black hole. And then once you also know that, you know something about that audience. They converted. Let's stop sending them ads. Let's save that money. Or they didn't. How do we want that experience to look like next? Do we know this person already? Should we send them an email, a follow-up email based on that conversation? And so you have to think of just as we advance in conversational analytics, it becomes kind of part and parcel with the type of analytics that you would get from your digital journey. But now it's seamless across that online to offline divide, the previous divide that there was.
Yeah, and the upsell, cross-sell, right? So not only the emails and the suppression that you talked about, but upsell, cross-sell. Someone is calling into a major insurance company, looking for a quote, mentioned boat insurance, but the first one was for their home, right? You can go back very in a sophisticated way, the marketer can, at scale, right? And retarget them for additional lines of business, which is additional revenue, additional stickiness, keeps your customers. Okay, so that is the predictive nature of what marketers already know, right? So they already know what outcome they are looking for. Talk a little bit about some of the things Invoke has done around making the marketer smarter by showing them things or uncovering things that they don't know that are going on in those calls, that they're not familiar with, or they don't have the insights to actually go out and look for these types of data points.
Yeah, and I would say that this is, what's really come to the forefront recently, in this COVID world of where we are today, where frankly, consumers, people, it feels weird to call them consumers sometimes, but we're all living very different lives right now. Many of us confined to our homes, working from home. Unfortunately, so many people have been laid off or furloughed temporarily or working part-time, what have you. For marketers, what we're hearing is that everything that they felt like they knew about their customers has been thrown out the window. Right, all their benchmarks around performance, everything that they were tracking before, those needs that those customers have changed dramatically in the last couple of months now. And so there's a lot that people don't know. There's a lot people don't know, and there's a lot that they're seeking out. How does technology come into play here? So one of the things, this is actually kind of more of the rudimentary sort of AI that we offer, which is known as keyword or phrase spotting. This is the ability to basically pre-identify some certain spoken words that might take place in a conversation and basically flag those calls so I can report out on them. And so one thing that a number of our customers have done right off the bat was, I want to track all of my customer calls where people are mentioning COVID or coronavirus or outbreak or some of these things. When we look at anything to do with healthcare, anything when includes person interacting face-to-face, or if the ultimate service is being fulfilled face-to-face, like in the home services category, in senior living or senior healthcare, all of a sudden they got to have tremendous visibility into what's going on and what their customers are asking about, and how do I think about that in the realm of the overall customer journey? How do I get their answers, their questions answered quickly? And so they're using this type of AI technology to be able to spot these conversations, to be able to track them over time. But really importantly, it's be able to isolate those certain calls where they actually need to then, as a human, spend a little bit of time on it. Spend a little time, diagnose what's going on here. So actually, we had this just come up the other day. We had a healthcare customer of ours that, they're back open for elective surgery. And great, right? The state allowed them to go back for elective surgery. If you've been following the news, that's been tremendously down. They've been basically losing tens of millions of dollars per week. So they need this, this is the lifeblood. And they were watching, okay, how many appointments are being set on elective surgery? And the day they open up for it, it hasn't moved. It hasn't moved. Where's our spike that we expect to see in our traffic? They go in, they start listening to these calls by isolating the ones that they need to listen to, and they realize that their agents were saying, hey, we're not open for elective surgery. The lifeblood of their business, their agents were saying the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an absolute killer. That's going to lead to layoffs, right? That's dollars and cents. So they need that type of visibility on a day-to-day basis. As things are changing, they need to be able to look into this, because you can't get that information by analyzing just your digital data alone. You have to understand it by understanding where your consumers are interacting with your business, where your customers are interacting with you, and having that full visibility.
Yep. Yeah, another example, one of our large telecommunications providers, 6 million plus inbound calls on an annual basis. When they applied this technology, what they found, the marketers found, was that over 15% of the inbound calls was an escalation to supervisor, right? So as they're spending money to acquire customers, they are calling in 15%, right, of that 6 million, those 6 million individuals calling in, they're not being handled in an appropriate way, right? So giving the marketer who would have no visibility into that at all downstream in the contact center, bridging that gap for them and giving them the visibility allows them to go take action, right? And actually get those dollars to work more effectively than they would have.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, the other way that things have dramatically shifted for businesses, right, is we go from a growth, revenue mindset to a cost savings mindset. How do I do things efficiently? How do I streamline my processes? How do I save money? How do I, you know, squeeze the most out of every marketing dollar that I have, right? In a past life, I was a media planner at an agency. And I remembered if you gave me a $4 million budget, I could spend it. You know, it was like I could afford to make a lot of mistakes or, you know, not be completely efficient with my budget because there was a lot of money behind that. $4 million was big to me. I know it might be small to some folks out there. At the time, it was very big to me. But if you gave me a $40,000 budget, my clients were like, tell me exactly how you're spending every dollar, because like my butt is on the line here. My boss didn't give me any more budget, so this is all you're going to get. You got to justify every single line item here. And so tying it back here, what we've seen a lot of is that it's not just looking at those positive cases. It's not just looking at when that good outcome happened, was an appointment set, was a purchase being made. But marketers are also focusing on those negative outcomes as well, because it's not good enough just to know, did my paid money, the money I'm spending, the effort I'm putting, drive a good outcome, but did it also drive the outcome I don't desire, right? And how do I stop doing that activity? Because I'm looking to save on that. You know, if you know your budget's cut 40%, you gotta be a lot more efficient with those things. And so to your point, Ben, I think it's looking at, oh my God, I just spent money driving this person in a call, and all they want to do is complain. Or you know, we see this all the time, like we're just giving them a bad experience. So it doesn't matter how many people I drive in to call. I got to focus my time over here and make sure that I'm working with my partners in the contact center and my partners on the brand side to make sure that experience is good. And how do they handle these types of calls that we're actually spending money that are actually going to keep our business afloat?
Yep. Yeah, well put. And I just want to remind folks, if you have questions, please either chat them in. I know some folks are on audio, so if they want to interrupt, we'll do our best to support the interruption, and we want you to get as much out of this as you possibly can. So, Ian, is the human-centric approach dead?
I was just talking about this earlier today. No, I think that this state that we're in today is highlighting how important a human-centric approach is. I kind of look at it like a pendulum. We all understand the efficiencies behind digital workflows, about all the data that can be gathered from it. We understand that, like, often I think what we see is I pay attention to the things I have data on. And if I have data on these digital experiences and these digital campaigns that I'm running, then that's where I'm going to focus my time. And I think what we're seeing, it's putting in stark contrast today how important human connections are in this day and age. Verizon put out a report that said wireless phone calls have doubled their peak of last year. They compared the average day today compared to Mother's Day of 2019, right? And they're handling more than double the wireless phone calls. And while AT&T says that internet traffic has skyrocketed 25%, calls have gone up much more than that. And so what consumers are actually looking for is that human-to-human connection. And because, like, all of a sudden a minor question, a minor irritation or a minor concern before is just jacked up, right? And it's just like, oh my God, I'm fearful. I fear what's going on outside. Can I go into the store? Do I need, like, how am I going to get my basic needs? Where am I going to find my toilet paper? Whatever it is, I need to talk to somebody to figure this stuff out. And we see that with our customer base, that like for the verticals and the industries that are less impacted, their call volumes are skyrocketing because people can't go into the store, and they need that type of one-to-one personal communication. And so I think the important thing from a marketing perspective to think about is how do we take a customer-centric approach and really meet our consumers and interact with them in the way that they want to interact with your business. Are you going to force them down a digital pathway because it's more profitable for your business? It's easier to handle? Or are you going to meet them and say, here's a moment where I should be providing, a chat option. Here's a moment where I should be providing a telephone option, and let the consumer decide how they want to reach out. And I think those are the businesses that really give those options today are the ones that are going to emerge from this whole scenario and this whole kind of economic condition that we're in right now, because they're going to have those loyal customers that really felt like that company was there for them in this time of crisis.
Yeah. Ian and Ben, I don't want to jump in, but you encouraged me to try to do this, but sometimes I'm listening and watching you, which if you're not watching and you're doing other work, this is one where Ian's fairly fairly animated, and he's not afraid to get really close to the camera. So I encourage you to put your other work down and just watch this one. It's actually entertaining. But are you saying that with AI, with artificial intelligence, we can actually, as marketers, be more human? Is that because I was, maybe I'm crossing the bridge here, but help me understand that.
Not at all. Imagine you're the person fielding these calls that are coming in from into that line, right? You only have visibility into your specific set of calls. You don't have visibility into the broader set of all those conversations that are happening. And it's up to the marketer, and we're partnering with these different teams to actually do that type of analysis and get that visibility, that full picture, and then work with those people to be able to deliver the best experience possible. And so, maybe it's to keep them on the website. Maybe what you can do is identify that there's a problem with your website, and people are calling in because that button's not working, or they don't have the right product information available on that page, or what have you, right? Or there's a single question that's tripping them up and they can't finally convert on the website. Okay, so you can use the information that you get, not by listening to call one by one, but by applying AI in a very specific way to run that type of analysis, and then fix that website experience, fix that call-based experience. And I think that what that leads to is a more human-centric approach, because that analytics and that visibility allows you to make those decisions. Perhaps this is something that we see all the time, actually, which is somebody sitting there and go, I have a real hunch that this is a problem in our business. I have no data to back it up. I've been thinking it for the last 6 months, but I have no data to go to my superiors or go to whomever and make this change happen. Well, once you have that data, once you finally have that visibility, you have the data to back it up. And so it's not just a hunch that sits on the table, it's actually action. And that's how we do become more human in that respect.
So your answer is yes.
Yeah, sorry. I went on for a while.
I apologize. It's good. That's why
you answer questions like I do. So, hey, let me tell you what, I applaud that. I think that goes back to your earlier statement that says, as humans, we're terribly inaccurate and we're not very consistent. So I'm getting the idea that you love machines.
Yeah.
Sorry to hijack there, Ben. I just, I thought that was an interesting comment.
Yeah, any other questions, feel free to jump in. I think what we've seen and what we're starting to see is call recordings should be taken right to the forefront within these large organizations, right? To your point, Ian, if 30 to 40, somewhere times up to our clients, 60% of their revenues coming in over the phone, if they're only optimizing based on digital or chat or SMS, they're not getting the full depth and breadth of what's actually happening with engagement there. So I think there are sophisticated companies, there are digitally transforming companies that are looking at all inputs and all data sources to make great educated decisions. Talk a little bit about not every prospect is created equal, and how companies are leveraging this technology to drive more of the right customers or lifetime value customers. Because in the days of old, any conversion was a great conversion, and we'll just count them 1 to 100. But you may find out that 20% or 20 of the 100, 20% churn in the next 12 months. So can you talk a little bit about that, how we leverage this technology to drive the right type of customer acquisition?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important, and I think this comes in where it's a collaboration and really about how you're applying this type of technology that Invoke has to offer as a marketer. So one example is that we work very closely with Dish, and it's there's a whole case study on Think with Google about this about how is it that they can say drive this dramatic revenue growth in their business over the last several years by really taking advantage of this type of data, knowing that they've got a subscription model and they're going to spend a lot of money to get a new customer in the door. How are they going to make sure that customer actually ends up being a profitable customer? Right, and so they work and apply their own sort of lifetime value type prediction on top of our ability to track the inbound conversations, those inbound calls, and then feed that back in to places like Google to be able to auto optimize not just on did a conversion happen, but what is the value of that particular conversion. So do we predict that this is somebody who is going to move in a year? Do we predict that this is somebody who's really price sensitive and is going to probably jump within a year? Or is this somebody who's going to be with Dish for a decade or so? And so if they can apply that type of that information of predicted lifetime value, combine it with our information about the phone call, and then use our plumbing to get that back into systems like Google, where they're spending, a good amount of money, then you can start to say, okay, the lifetime value of customer A that we just closed may only be a couple $100, right? Because we predicted that they're gonna churn out after 18 months and not be a customer anymore. Or is the predicted value going to be several $1,000s or $10,000 because they're going to be with that company for a very long time? And so, yeah, especially in those types of subscription models, it's really important to understand the value of that individual conversion. And that's not even to mention those high intent customers that are calling, and those types of micro conversions where they're asking the right types of questions, that they're demonstrating the right type of buying behavior. And what you can glean from the phone call, and feed that back into those automated strategies that companies like Google have to offer.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. One example I'll bring up, as of late, we've seen a lot, I would say, adoption from our customer base and interest in the marketplace around getting this, additional insight into the things that aren't known. One of our large home services companies, when they ran our advanced AI technology, what they found was, the marketers found, was that 30% of the agents downstream were actually canceling appointments outright and not rescheduling those appointments. And it allowed that marketer within a day to go back to the contact center of thousands of folks and get the message out that, our number one priority is not to cancel. Our number one priority is to just push this out and reschedule. And they weren't aware, right, that this was happening downstream. So I think helping those marketers connect the dots, because typically, sales marketing front end, contact center, black box on the back end. By bridging that with this technology, it really helps companies, not just marketers, be a lot smarter about how they go to market, and allows them in real time to change their tactics.
Yeah, I think that the word that always comes up for me is discovery, and what they're discovering by having access to this new rich set of data that was frankly missing before. And we see enterprising individuals who really recognize this and push their companies internally to take better advantage of this information. And it leads to great things for them. It leads to great things for their business, because they're the ones who have the keys. And those are the individuals who are spotting all of these things, right? The person who spots that, oh my God, we're not taking these elective surgeries, or we're just simply canceling appointments and not offering to reschedule them, is like, how valuable is that person to your organization? And so we just see that a lot. We always say, like, God, I got Invoke and I discovered X, I discovered Y, that we just had no idea was happening before.
Yep. Couple more questions. In your opinion, will phone calls ever die?
Will phone calls ever die? I'll say I don't think conversations will die, right?
Yep.
I think I was thinking about this because somebody asked me, like, what do they think was like the long-term impact of COVID, and I started thinking about this. And I think that we're all so experienced right now in using this type of technology that we're on, in using Zoom and GoToMeeting, in using Blue Jeans, what have you, that I think we're going to continue to see more ways that people can connect, and in more flexible ways that they can connect. So eventually we may see that may bypass the phone system and switchboards and everything that you might associate with that, and the phone number may go away. But the fundamental concept of people being able to connect over a distance and have a conversation, that's becoming more important right now, right? If you can't get together, and people are more mobile than they ever have before, there's no way that that's going away. And those conversational platforms will always be there.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. And then just to come back to the compliance piece, we are PCI compliant. That is important. We want to protect our customers. We want to protect the consumers and the brands. We do redact in real time, which keeps sensitive Social Security, credit card information out of these call recordings that ultimately become transcripts that are used in real time to eliminate hundreds of people looking over data or scrolling through, searching for words, or listening to phone calls, which, in some instances saves companies tons, right, of money. So I wanted to point that out. What else, before we kind of wrap things up and I hand things back over to Rob, like what else gets you excited, Ian, in the morning when you get out of bed and you think about machine learning and this scary topic of AI and adoption and across the market? Like, when you jump up and clap your hands and say, I'm ready for the day, what are the top couple of things you're thinking about that make you really excited?
Well, I can't speak for every company out there, but think about AI and the way that we're applying it today is like there's so much fear and concern around it, and those who are actually using it in practical senses kind of think, what? It's like, what am I doing? I'm automating a repetitive task, and I'm discovering new insights from this type of data. And I think where we certainly see the boundary being pushed today, as far as the capability of AI, is taking in these vast sets of recordings, this unstructured data that we previously didn't know what to do with, other than kind of put it in a window and start clicking play on it. We're now able to apply machine learning models that are called that actually have the ability to surface insights about these conversations. So Whereas what we previously talked about is, oh, I know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for when an appointment is being set. I'm looking for when a purchase is being made. I'm looking for when people are mentioning these specific words. We're now able to go in and say, actually, here are some new things that you never considered before. Or actually, to your point about appointments, Ben, it's like, is this an appointment being set with a first-time customer, or is this an appointment being rescheduled, or is this appointment set for a repeat customer? And we have customers in the realm of medical devices where an existing customer setting an appointment, well, that's getting your hearing aid battery changed, right? That's not the brand new person who's buying my device for the very first time, because that brand new person buying my device for the very first time has an extremely high lifetime value for my business. And that person coming in who's getting their battery replaced, of course, we want to treat them to a good experience. We want them to buy again. We want them to be a happy customer. In the realm of hearing aids or medical devices, this is utmost importance. But from a business standpoint, that matters a lot to understand those nuances. And so if you can apply machine learning to begin surfacing these things that you didn't expect or you didn't know to look for, as we talked about before, you always had a hunch about, but never had the data to back it up. I think that's what I'm really excited about. And to be able to then take that new learning and actually turn it into something that is actionable on an ongoing basis, and doing it in a user-friendly way where you don't need to be a data scientist. I think it's the other thing that we see with data science and machine learning is, oh my God, is it complicated? I got to query these systems. It's big data. I got to have an advanced degree. But our philosophy is, let's bring it down to the level of accessibility and the level of practicality for today's marketers who are experts in their craft and in their field. They're not experts necessarily in data science. How can we democratize that and make that valuable for them?
Yep. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's super, super insightful. One of the best and brightest we have. Very passionate about this topic. Really, appreciate Ian, all the insights. Rob, I think we've taken it as far as we're going to take it today. I'll turn it back over to you. Thanks again for having us. Greatly appreciate on behalf of Invoke and obviously the board at Leeds Council. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have a couple of questions, Ian, for you. Obviously, you've pointed out, some of the complexities. You also pointed out some of the low-level ease of some of this. One, how accurate is it? You talked about transcribing early on. You talked about being able to keyword identify early on. Is this to a point? Is the technology to a point today where the accuracy is human-like or better than human-like? Is that something that we can safely say?
Yeah, I mean, I would confidently say better than human. When we know the realities of frankly paying people to listen to calls and disposition them, and you've got, maybe you're employing, you're outsourcing this, let's say, but you're employing 6, 12, 20 people to do it. They all have their different methodologies. They all hear different things, and you can get an AI model to get to that type of 97, 98% accuracy. Any AI predictive model, or a model that's going to detect when a certain outcome, binary, yes, no, did it happen, is always going to have some error. It's never going to be perfect because it's just not the nature of it. Not only that, but when you're dealing with things like audio recordings, there's issues. I have no idea. Maybe I'm stuttering right now with my VoIP connection, so there could be an issue there, right? So it's never going to be 100% accurate. But is it going to be as accurate as humans or better? I believe it is today. And there's a lot of things that go into that, like what's the nuance of the thing that you're trying to detect? Are you trying to detect something really subtle, or are you trying to detect something that may be a bit more obvious? And then what type of data are you pumping into that model? Are you pumping in real clean data that you're highly confident in? Or are you kind of like relying on the company to do that type of call scoring for you and pumping in that data where there might be some errors? Those errors that go into the system are going to result in in a variance and accuracy in the output.
What are some of the common like obstacles? I mean, obviously you talked about the fear, the anxiety, this is going to be way too technical. I'm going to need to hire internal staff just to support this. Are those all common beliefs before you get engaged with them? What's the misconception about that? And then what's the reality of how, if I'm sitting back without any of this, I'm a call center, I'm manually tracking, I'm hiring people to disposition, I'm hiring people to transcribe, and you come to me and you say, hey, we've got this and I can lift what you're doing. What's really are those the common obstacles? And two, what's the reality of getting this thing plugged in and working? Is it fairly easy? Do you guys have a transition? Do we start one place and move to another as we grow?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, first of all, yes, you always start with an initial goal and you have a plan to kind of ramp up, right? If you try to do everything at once, you're going to kind of fall down, because once you get into this arena, there's a long runway of ways that you can continue to grow. It's like all of a sudden putting website analytics and going, okay, now I've got my call counts, I'm good to go. No, you could start, putting together those pathways and understanding those behaviors and events in a really detailed way. And so there's a way that you're going to grow into that. You're not going to try to do everything all at once. I would say the big hurdles are actually more organizationally on the marketer standpoint. I mean, when you have a marketing team, let's say, who has never thought much about calls in the past, they thought of that as the domain of another team, or they knew calls were important, but they never had the data. So, it's sort of like, now you're telling me all this stuff is available, and understanding kind of your interaction with the contact center and getting over those silos, I think is just mentally kind of a bigger hurdle than a lot of people might realize at the outset. When it comes to implementation, this isn't like a 6-month, huge endeavor. You can start getting real value within a few months, especially with the ways that we allow you, even with AI. You can begin with things like pre-trained models where we've learned off of industry calls, and you can apply those within a couple of clicks. And then you can start thinking, okay, let me get value from AI now, and then let me start, gathering the data assets required to begin getting more value out of it. So we give you kind of a way to kind of step into it and grow into it. And frankly, with AI, the other thing is transparency into what's actually going on. AI is often a black box in itself. So we want to give the most amount of transparency to see, okay, what's the accuracy of my model? How can I go in and actively begin to improve it, and that type of thing. So there's a whole pathway to kind of realize value quickly and then dig in more as you kind of grow.
As you were talking, I was thinking about an upcoming webinar we could do where we could take user submissions and break down some of the online calls that some of these call centers get. I can only imagine that we come across some very interesting stories.
Sure.
On call side. Ben, I'll leave that up to you to help us gather an inventory of the best of the best calls.
Yeah, for sure.
I think if we position it right, it could actually be a comedy hour for sure. Well, look, guys, I can't thank you enough. It's broken down something that's been anxiety filled for me as we talk about AI. We know that regulators and legislators in the world of lead gen, they typically don't respond well when we start talking about machine learning, because once again, I think it's a lack of understanding of what we're trying to do to actually bring a better experience to the consumer, which ultimately is what they're asking for. I just feel like there's some thought about machine learning and AI where we're tricking, or we're smarter than the humans, so we're able to manipulate. And although those things certainly could happen, you clearly over the last 45 minutes have demonstrated the ability to actually help that consumer have a better experience. I mean, Ian, you explained how we can humanize it. I thought that was beautiful, how, through machines, we can actually become more human, which is, a hard to grasp concept. So this has been very exciting for me. I would imagine I forgot to ask you, which, I mean, I'm only the leads counsel, not worried about TCPA or anything, but while you're monitoring some of these inbound calls and you're hearing, I want to opt out, that's an immediate ability to trigger also some communication to our team to remove that, right? And block them out of that automatic.
Get rid of their data and fully comply with that sort of stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here. I think that we ought to do something, and break some of this down in the future. This is certainly an area where we have a lot of questions and a lot of interest. So I think this is something that we should make ongoing. Well, listen, everybody, once again, I hope that you've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed it. I certainly love putting these things together. I want to encourage you to go to the leadscounsel.org website. Under our resource hub, we have our events hub tab. In the next day or two, I'll have this thing edited down. We'll have it listed under today's date so that you can watch it as soon as it's out there. We'll also push out the link to this on Sunday's email. I usually have that ready by then. We have something very exciting coming out with the council that is available today to look at. It's certainly in its infancy, and we're going to grow it, but we have the Jobs Hub location on our website right now, and so you can go to leadscounsel.org into our resource hub and see some of the open jobs that are open in the community of lead generation. And so we're going to grow that benefit for our members as well. And once again, we still have our silver membership, at least for now. We're not sure how long we're going to keep it, but we've brought it down from the $2,000 to the $500 a year level, or $42 a month. It's a no-brainer to get access like this and access to a ton of other stuff that we have benefit-wise. Ian, Ben, thank you guys very much. I appreciate the time that you spent to this, and I can't wait to get this thing recorded or edited down and up so other people can see it.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
All right.